Let me tell you what my deep research and basically vision is.
I hope there's Bigfoot. I don't think there is.
I'm not telling you nothing.
The aliens won't let it happen.
Happening now, breaking.
Bernie Sanders is angry.
Bears beats Battlestar Galactica.
What are the tips? Give me some tips on how to work with Wes Anderson.
Be ready to speak very fast and very clearly, because that's definitely one key thing.
I will only tell the truth.
Until you and 6 kids you barely know in wet bathing suits have surrounded 9 chimpanzees outside of a Wendy's. You probably really don't know yourself, okay?
Yep. And we back.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to your new favorite podcast and the best in political, sports, and paranormal news coverage. I'm your host, Wes Anderson, and this is In the Shed. This is episode 43, so whether you're back for more or finding us for the first time this week, hey, thanks for tuning in. It's early Friday morning, July 1st, and I'm in a shed in the backyard of my home in Alabama, also I can hang out with you tools and talk about the latest headlines, stories, and rumors in the world of politics, sports, and the paranormal. I have very vivid dreams. I don't mean like Martin Luther King type dreams, although I certainly support that dream as well. And also dreams of a world in which the shopping cart gets returned too. It only takes a minute. Just return your shopping carts, people. Put them in the little... Okay, but I'm not talking about those kinds of dreams. I'm talking about night-night dreams. I have very vivid night-night dreams. And I had a dream the other day. And in my dream, my wife had taken me somewhere for the weekend. It was like a surprise. And we got to this place. It was like a venue, like a big theater. And some of my friends from college were there. It was quite a nice surprise. Some of them and their whole families with their children that I've never met and only seen on Facebook. And it was like some type of reunion. And there was this special show that was being performed by the Alabama State Troopers Association. I don't know if that's a thing, but they were there and they were in costume and they did some beautiful line dancing. Not the type of show that I would normally sign up for or buy tickets to see. So after it was over, I told my wife, well, it's been great to see friends and catch up with people, and the show was interesting, but why are we here? What is this? And she said, take a look at your playbill. And I was like, okay. And so I looked down at the playbill, and I didn't notice anything at first, and I was looking, and then at the bottom of the playbill, I see my picture. And it says, coming next month, stand-up comedy. Performed by Wes Anderson. And I was like, hey, how? And I'm like, what is this? And she's like, surprise, I know that you've thought about doing stand-up comedy before. I booked you a show. And I'm like, here at this giant theater where the Alabama State Troopers Association has just performed a very intricate line dance? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, how did you get me a spot at a theater when I've never even done an open mic? And she's like, I just asked. And I woke up and I thought that was a funny dream. And it's true that stand-up comedy is something that I have often thought about, would like to do as just a side hobby. Do some open mic nights. I actually did do stand-up comedy once in my life. it was a talent show at a church to raise money for cancer. And I decided to do stand-up comedy. I'd never done stand-up comedy before. I think I was maybe like a freshman in college, and I wrote some material, wrote some jokes, did my best, and I came in second place. But really, I might have come in first place, I think. Because how the talent show worked, it was a fundraiser. So in front of every person that entered, we had people that sang songs. We had people that did different things. Every person that entered the talent show had a bucket, and people could buy tickets to put in your bucket if they thought that you did a good job, if they wanted to support you. At the end of the night, whoever had the most tickets in their bucket won. And I'm just saying, the guy that beat me out, he sang Desperado, and he wasn't bad. But I also saw him cash in a couple 20s and put some tickets in his own bucket. So yeah, I might have come in first place. And then also for the first, second, third place winners, they had like a cash prize. I think first place was like $100, so maybe this gentleman got his money back. Second place was $50. Third place was $25. And so they call the third place winner up there. They give them their money. The third place person is like, and I'm going to put it right back in the donation because I want cancer to be eradicated. And everybody burst into applause. And then they brought me up there. And they gave me my $50. And they brought the first place person up there, gave them the $100. And he was like, I'm putting it right back in the donation bucket because I want cancer to be eradicated. Everybody applauded. The whole room is looking at your boy. And I'm like, thanks for coming out. I've been Wes Anderson. I'm not a fan of cancer, okay? But look, I was a poor college student, okay? I wasn't sure if I had gas money to get home. I needed to buy some groceries. And by groceries, I mean ramen noodles and bologna. Maybe some bottled water, and hey, if we a big spender, some Gatorades. Yeah, I was the only one that kept the money, and to this day, I still think about that, and it makes me laugh. Everybody was just staring, waiting for me to put it back in the pot, and I put it in my pocket and walked off the stage, and didn't look back. And it was the right decision. I had to eat, okay. But yeah, I did do stand-up comedy once before. I thought that it was a lot of fun. Always wanted to go to an open mic night. Since then, I've never just put myself out there to do it. But after that dream, maybe I will, because apparently I have the ability to headline arenas where the Alabama State Troopers Association line dancers perform. And that's pretty dope. My wife is now my agent. She gonna make some calls on my behalf. I will let you know the times and the places that I'll be cracking some jokes. And if I win prize money, I'm keeping it too, okay? Yeah, so what else is going on? I found out something interesting about our show. I don't, other than the light editing that I do to the show to get it ready to put out for you, our listeners, I don't really listen to myself. I don't like the sound of my voice recorded. I already am familiar with what I have to say. But I went on Spotify the other day because I just hadn't looked at our show on that platform in a while. And I noticed scrolling through the 42 episodes that we have live on Spotify that 4 or 5 of them have that little bar, that COVID misinformation label bar. This was a thing after, if you remember all this stuff with Joe Rogan when he was on his podcast on Spotify, and people got in an outrage because of the things that he was saying about COVID, and they said he spread misinformation, and they started putting a disclaimer before you click on his episode down at the bottom of each episode, a little blue, I think it's blue, I'm colorblind, but a little blue bar that says something about learn about COVID-19. And 5 of our episodes have that same disclaimer. They think we out here in the shed spreading misinformation, Spotify? What have we ever said about COVID that is not accurate or that's conspiratorial? I told you COVID is a real thing. I know that it's dangerous for people that have compromised immune systems. I've known people, including neighbors, that have passed away to COVID-19, and I told you that I got vaccinated. I made the decision, my family and I, to get vaccinated. So yeah, I thought that was kind of weird that Spotify would put, I'm going to have to go back and listen to those episodes, see why they put those labels on there. I wonder if it's just because I talked about it at all. So would you like to be a part of an experiment with me? Let me offer a disclaimer. I do not believe what I'm about to say. This is just an experiment that we are doing together. COVID is not real. COVID is not real. COVID is not real. Vaccines, vaccines, vaccines. Okay, experiment over. As I said, I do not believe the things that I just said. We're just running a little experiment. We want to see if we can trip up the algorithm, and we will see if episode 43 also has the COVID misinformation label, the disclaimer at the bottom of the episode. Go to Spotify. Look for In the Shed with Wes Anderson and let me know. Email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Again, that's intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Find me on Twitter at intheshed4 and let me know if it is there. All right, enough of that. Let's get to some comments and corrections. Our humble little show is now being listened to in 27 countries across the globe, and we're closing in on 5,000 downloads, currently averaging more listeners per episode than ever before. We might, by the time we record episode 44, we might be at 5,000 downloads, so thank you for your support. We're also up over 5,000 followers on Twitter somehow. You can follow the show there at In the Shed 4. Big shout out to India, which makes up an astounding 39% of our listener base. We love you, India. Put me on a billboard in India. Shout out Ramesh. Followed by the UK, and we are really growing as of late in France. So parlez-vous français to you, France. Followed by Australia, Canada, Mexico, Russia, Denmark, and the Netherlands. With, of course, the US of A holding steady at 53% of our listening audience. If you keep listening and sharing the show, we'll keep growing this thing together. It's a joint effort. It takes us all pulling in the same direction, my babies. Did you know you can now support our beautiful bald eagle of a show in 2 ways financially? That's right, you can. The first way to support the show is by sending $4 into the show via our Cash app, which is the Wes Anderson, THE Wes Anderson, all one word, lowercase, no spaces. And in return, we'll send you our weekly email, the best way to keep up with the show in between episodes. If you send me $4, I'll keep giving you the news. As long as you send $4 a month, you'll get the best newsletter going. We're up to 21 subscribers now. Be a part of the newsletter. You don't want to miss it. And if you don't want the newsletter, you could just send in a one-time tip. Just be like, hey, I like the show. Here's $4 on the Cash App. Go get you a coffee. Keep that 50-foot extension cord plugged in for us. The other way to support the show is by downloading the Mercari app, MERCARI, and finding our In the Shed account and buying some of our items. We got a great show for you tonight, but first let's get to some listener emails. Our first email comes from Micah from Idaho, who writes, Wes, what happened to the running count of how many days it's been without an invite to the Bigfoot Festival? It was a staple of the show. I guess your cousin was right. Thanks for listening to the show and for writing in, Micah. I think you're probably the first person to ever write into the show from Idaho. I'd have to go back and verify, but Micah, you might be the first person to ever write into the show from the state of Idaho. Yeah, I guess actually until you said that, I didn't realize we had stopped doing our count. That was just a happy accident. For a long time, we had this running count of how many days that we had not received an invite to a Bigfoot festival. It was a running inside joke that lasted for over a year on this show. I just forgot to include it. So I guess the countdown is dead, but all jokes have to come to an end at some point, Micah. We couldn't go on forever, and I guess really we had to stop the countdown anyway, because here a few weeks ago I had an opportunity, a month maybe ago, I had an opportunity to go to a local Bigfoot festival, and I couldn't make it. I had other places to be that day. But yeah, I guess my cousin was right. I may never get invited to a Bigfoot festival. That, of course, is referencing the podcast war, the brouhaha, if you will, that existed between In the Shed with Wes Anderson and my cousin's podcast, 8 Bits and Bobbles. They haven't recorded lately. It's been a while. Their podcast has gone on a break. They're looking for some new equipment. I hope that they put out some more shows soon. They had a really good thing going. But yeah, I guess my cousin was correct, Micah. I'm sorry to let you down, buddy. Our next email comes from Tara, or it could be Tara. I'm going to go with Tara, from Mississippi, who says, I thought it was dumb that you featured a story about fires in food processing plants on a quote-unquote news show. They're obviously accidents, and to suggest otherwise is asinine. It's a total non-story. It's not a non-story, Tara, because we shared it on our show, and we made it a story. So, you thought what I did was dumb. That's okay. I'm just glad that you're listening, Tara. You can listen to my show as often as you want. You can find me as dumb as you want. It don't bother me at all. I just appreciate your time. Yeah, we are a news show, but we're a different type of news show. We're bringing you stuff that other news shows might not be. We're investigating it all together and trusting you to draw your own conclusions. We don't tell you what to think on In the Shed. If you turn on the news, all you're hearing is inflation and Roe versus Wade and the Supreme Court. And those are important things. But we're not going to take up all of your time and all of your space between your ears talking about the same things in the same way that you're hearing them talked about everywhere else. You have Fox News and MSNBC and CNN and ABC for that. If that's what you want, those things are already out there. We're something different. We will cover those things. We will talk about things that matter in the world, but we do it in our own way. And for the record, I never even suggested that those fires were set intentionally. I just said that there are a lot of them and that I have questions about it and how it might affect an already struggling supply chain. But please keep listening to the show, Tara, and thank you for writing in. And finally, Leroy from Texas. Is that your real name, Leroy? I've grown up in Alabama my whole life. I've never met a Leroy. That might be surprising to those of you out there who are like, I would think Alabama's full of Leroys. Maybe it is, but I've never met one. But Leroy from Texas writes, Wes, I started listening to Bigfoot Bob's podcast after you had him on the show. I really enjoy it. Thanks. Hey, that's really cool, Leroy. Bob is, of course, from Texas as well, and I'll pass along the information. I'm sure that he's glad that he's got a listener. If nothing else, Bob, we got you one listener, which is pretty cool. You can check out Bob's podcast, my friend Bigfoot Bob. His podcast is Bigfoot Club. You can find him on Twitter at Bigfoot Club 1. You can buy some pretty cool merch from his website. I have a coffee cup that I drink out of while editing this show. And yeah, Bigfoot Club is a great show. He and his nephew host it together, and it's always a good listen. That's all the listener emails this week. If you have any thoughts that you'd like to share, you can email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Again, that's intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. I might even read it on air. All right, let's switch to this. Let's get to the news in the world of politics, and let's hit the headlines. Stocks tumble under Biden into the worst first half in over 50 years, writes Breitbart. Poll finds one thing Dems and Republicans can agree on: U.S. is moving in wrong direction, reports the New York Post. Supreme Court limits Biden's power to cut emissions, says the BBC. From USA Today, Biden vowed to do everything possible for migrants, but tragedies still happen. And finally, A lot of far-right candidates got walloped in this week's GOP primaries, and that is according to HuffPost. Our first story in the world of politics, South Dakota AG removed from post after hitting and killing a pedestrian. That's right, my babies. We're about to put a bow on the saga of Jason Ravnsborg. Tuesday, state senators removed South Dakota Attorney General Jason Ravnsborg from office after he struck and killed pedestrian Joe Beaver while driving. After the accident in September 2020, questions arose about Ravnsborg's conduct, including a statement that he didn't immediately know he hit a person rather than a deer. A police investigation showed that Beaver was walking on the shoulder of a highway when Ravnsborg struck him. Throughout police interrogations, Ravnsborg maintained that he did not know what he hit until Beaver's body was found the next morning. But investigators told Ravnsborg that Beaver's face went through his windshield. Beaver's glasses were found inside Ravnsborg's car. Again, why would a man be walking down the road? Ravnsborg asked North Dakota investigators in September 2020. I believe I'm on the road and wham, my life changes. I can't even continue reading the article because that quote bothers me. And then wham, my life changes. That one quote sums up the entire character of one Jason Ravnsborg. Character that has been exposed repeatedly throughout this entire process. Wham, my life changes. What about Joe Beaver? What about his family? Your life changed? Jason Ravnsborg? A crash reconstruction found that Ravnsborg had all 4 tires on the shoulder of the road when he struck Beaver. Investigators told Ravnsborg that Beaver's body ended up lying only a couple of feet from the edge of the road. A flashlight Beaver carried was still on even when investigators found it later, they said. Ravnsborg repeated many times that he never saw a body that night. Ravnsborg also denied being distracted by his smartphone, but the investigators showed him data indicating that he was on his phone looking at news articles and blog posts until about a minute before the crash. So when we look at that, our concern is everything that we're seeing here is appearing that you were on your phone reading political stuff at the time, one investigator said in an interrogation. But I just wasn't, Ravnsborg replied. I set it down. 2 days after the crash, Ravnsborg held an impromptu meeting with the South Dakota Division of Criminal Investigation and a digital forensic expert about what kind of information can be recovered from cell phones. The expert, Brent Gomer, who has since retired from the South Dakota DCI, says that he was uncomfortable with the meeting. We were not supposed to be involved. We conflicted out of this investigation and contacted North Dakota to do the investigation. We were not supposed to have anything to do with it. After the meeting, Gromer took notes on the meeting and passed them along to his supervisors. Good for you, sir. That meeting informed part of the basis for the second article of impeachment for malfeasance in office. Ravnsborg was charged with 3 misdemeanors for the crash. He pleaded no contest to 2 of those in a criminal case stemming from the accident. Attorney General Ravnsborg is the first statewide official to be impeached, removed from office, and barred from holding a future office in the state. The votes came at the end of the first day of Ravnsborg's impeachment trial at the Capitol in Pierre. Ravnsborg attended the proceedings but chose not to testify before the Senate. The State House of Representatives impeached Ravnsborg earlier this year with 2 separate articles leading into the Senate trial. The Republican-controlled state Senate voted 24-9 in favor of the first article of impeachment relating to crimes that led to the death of Joe Beaver. Senators voted 31-2 in favor of the second article, which was for malfeasance in office. Republican Senator Tim Johns voted against both articles of impeachment. He said the results do not set a good precedent. I think if you don't like the job they do, you vote them out, Johns said. You don't use impeachment. I think that's supposed to be held for very egregious events. None of these, yeah, a man died, that's the tragedy. That's not a good enough reason to impeach. This man is the horses behind. Senator Tim Johns is a horses behind. And Republicans in the state of South Dakota, I hope that you vote him out next. He said, yeah, a man died. That's not a good enough reason to impeach. It is when the person that killed him is the top law enforcement officer of the state, who happened to lie repeatedly to police, who was driving distractedly, who tried to cover up evidence, and then who met with his own law enforcement officials, even though they were supposed to have nothing to do with the case. Tim Johns is a joke. Ravnsborg declined to comment to the press on Tuesday. Jenny Beaver, Joe Beaver's widow, also did not comment. Victor Nimick, a cousin of Joe Beaver, said that he's pleased with the outcome and he's glad that it's over. With me, there's not really any closure because my cousin is still gone, Nimick said. But glad it swung our way and kind of gives me a little bit of hope for our state. Pennington County State Attorney Mark Vargo was the lead prosecutor in the impeachment case for Ravnsborg's removal from office. Vargo hopes the Senate vote means politicians can no longer use their position to get favor from law enforcement. I hope that it means some of the "do you know who I am? I'm the Attorney General using your position" will be chilled, Vargo said. My first boss made it very clear that if you were ever pulled over and if the law enforcement officer saw your badge, you were fired. It was just a given. Republican Senator Jim Bolin voted in favor of removal and disqualification. He hopes the Senate vote means no one is above the law. I think that more than anything else, it means that we have a very high standard for elected officials and that everyone is subject to the same rules, Bolin said. Governor Kristi Noem gets to appoint a replacement attorney general to serve until January. The Republican Party is holding its convention this weekend, where it will choose a new nominee for the November election. So, this is a story that we've been covering for almost 2 years. From the moment of the incident, I saw a news article buried somewhere on Yahoo about this. And we talked about it on the show. After that, I did a deep dive into actually what went on and what happened. And we've continued to cover it. We've been like a dog with a bone. We haven't let it go because this is such an egregious example of an elected official and of a law enforcement officer using their power and their position to engage in conduct that is nothing short of evil. Nothing short of evil. To take a man's life, to shirk accountability, to try to cover up a crime, and to refuse to be honest the entire time. The facts in this case were clear from the outset. Jason Ravnsborg was on the way home from a political fundraising event. He was on his phone reading articles on the highway. He drifted into the shoulder of the road. Mr. Joe Beaver, whose car was broken down, was on that shoulder of the road, made contact with the car. His head went through the windshield. His glasses wound up inside Jason Ravnsborg's car. And rather than get out and check on the man, rather than call an ambulance to see if he might be able to be saved, Jason Ravnsborg decided to call 911 and to lie. To lie. To say, hey, I hit something. I think it was just a deer. I'm okay. I'm just going to go home. Somehow, he was allowed to come back to the scene the next day with law enforcement. And it was Jason Ravnsborg that happened to be the one to find the body of Joe Beaver, who was deceased at the scene. During interrogation, AG Ravnsborg does not fess up, does not say I didn't realize that I hit a person, but I guess you're right. I'm so sorry. Oh my goodness, I was on my phone. Doesn't remove himself from office, doesn't call the aggrieved family. No, he sticks to his story. Didn't see him. Sir, his head went through your windshield. Didn't see him. Sir, his glasses are in your car. Didn't see him. Sir, he was 2 feet from the road with a flashlight on. Didn't know I hit a person. Sir, you're the one that led us to the body. Was not distracted. Sir, phone records showed that you were on your cell phone. I wasn't. Sir, the scene shows that all 4 of your tires were off the road. I wasn't. He ran across the road. Then to make matters worse, even after being interrogated, being caught in his lies by the police, he goes to his own investigators that are under his authority, who are not supposed to have anything to do with the case because it is a conflict of interest. And he's like, hey, what type of information can they pull from a phone? Can they really tell what news articles I was looking at? Can they tell how long I had my phone in my hand? he was caught. Then he gets charged with 3 misdemeanors. He took a man's life. He got charged with 3 misdemeanors. As a part of the trial for the misdemeanors, he drags Joe Beaver's name through the mud, somebody whose life he's already snuffed out with his lack of responsibility and care. His attorney tries to claim that Joe Beaver was suicidal. They bring in his psychological record, the fact that he's taken anti-anxiety medication, which so many of us in this country do. They say that Joe Beaver was trying to kill himself, that he was running across the road. They bring in his cousin that lives across the state, hadn't talked to him in a year and a half, to testify that I think he probably was suicidal. Not shady behavior at all. He gets found guilty of misdemeanors. He has to pay a couple $500 fines. And he announces, more bravado than Donald Trump after a hole-in-one, he announces, even after being convicted of crimes and taking someone's life, that he plans to remain in office as the top cop of the state of South Dakota. Luckily, he was impeached. And even after he was impeached a couple months ago, we told you we would keep tabs on it, but I really had a lot of doubt whether he would actually be removed from office. So often we see these elected officials get impeached. It's a slap on the wrist, but then they don't actually get removed from office. But at least in this instance, the Republicans of the state of South Dakota did the right thing. And they offered at least a tiny fraction of accountability and repercussion for the evil enacted by Jason Ravnsborg. He's been removed from office and he's been barred from holding any elected position in the state of South Dakota again. Thank goodness. He should be in prison, is where he should be. 3 hots and a cot. But at least he's out of office. At least he's not in charge of enforcing the law that he doesn't even keep himself for an entire state of people. And at least he can't hold office again. I don't know why this hasn't been a major running story on CNN, on Fox News, on NBC and ABC, but it hasn't been outside of the state of South Dakota. I don't think you can find any other news outlet or organization that has covered this story from start to finish the way that we have here on In the Shed. I've had a number of people from the state of South Dakota who have emailed into the show, who have sent messages on Twitter thanking us for our coverage, because if it was not for us, they would not have been able to keep up with it so easily. Nobody's reporting on it, and I don't understand why. This is a big deal. It was already a tragedy before Jason Ravnsborg lied. A man's life was already snuffed out. A woman, a wife, became a widow. A family lost their son, their cousin, their brother, their friend, their neighbor. And you decided to compound their grief exponentially by shirking accountability, by trying to hold on to your position, your influence, your power, by trying to use those things to get out of the consequences for your own decision-making and choices. You have no business being an elected official. You have no business being in law enforcement. And I've said it 1,000 times. Every time we've covered this story, I've said it on this show, we don't often call into question the character of people that we don't know personally. We might talk about poor decisions by politicians. We might talk about policy issues we disagree with, but we don't often call into character the question of people that we're covering on this show. But for Jason Ravnsborg, I will make an exception, because there's a whole lot of names that I would like to call this man, but I cannot do it on air. He has shown us who he is repeatedly, and I have chosen to believe it. He's a man without integrity. He's a man without a moral compass. And now he's a man without a job. And at least Joe Beaver's family can take the tiniest amount of solace in that fact. And I'm thankful that here on In the Shed with Wes, we finally get to put a bow on the saga of Jason Ravnsborg. I hope I never have to talk about the man again. And my continued thoughts and prayers and good vibes go out to Joe Beaver's family, to his widow, to his community, to those who cared about him. Our next story in the world of politics, QAnon creator Q returns after nearly 2-year hiatus. The anonymous message board user known as Q, whose cryptic announcement spawned the fascist pro-Trump QAnon conspiracy theory, has returned to posting after a nearly 2-year hiatus. On Friday night, someone with access to Q's login credentials posted on 8kun, the anarchic internet community where Q last posted in December 2020. "Shall we play a game once more?" The first post marking Q's return to the board read, signed Q. The message was written in the same clue-like format as thousands of earlier Q posts dubbed Q drops by their fans that led to the creation of QAnon in late 2017. Q's followers believe the messages explain the world as it really is, controlled by Satan-worshipping, child-eating pedophiles and the Democratic Party, finance, and other institutions. In QAnon's telling, Donald Trump was recruited by the military to run for president in 2016 to take down the nefarious cabal. QAnon believers await the storm, an event in which they believe Trump enemies like Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama will be executed via orders from military tribunal or imprisoned in Guantanamo Bay. The Q poster followed up with 2 more messages on Friday night. Asked why they had disappeared for more than a year, they wrote, "It had to be done this way." "Are you ready to serve your country again?" Q wrote in another post. "Remember your oath." Despite its ludicrous claims, QAnon has managed to become a faction within the Republican Party. 2 current members of Congress, Reps. Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia and Lauren Boebert from Colorado, have voiced support for QAnon in the past, and more Q backers are expected to win office in the midterms. A 2021 poll found that QAnon's core tenets have a significant amount of support, with 15% of people surveyed saying they believe the world is run by a satanic pedophile cabal. Q stopped posting on 8kun in December 2020, shortly after Trump's election defeat. Ron Watkins, the former 8kun administrator who has often been accused of controlling the QAnon account, is currently running as a long-shot candidate for an Arizona House seat. Watkins, who's denied posting as Q, did not respond to immediate requests for comment on Q's return. It's not clear whether the new Q posts are meant to coincide with the Supreme Court's ruling Friday overturning abortion rights. QAnon has won backing from a number of prominent Trump supporters, including former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn and comedian Roseanne Barr, and MAGA lawyers Lynn Wood and Sidney Powell. A QAnon leader has successfully organized a coalition of Secretary of State candidates who could be poised to win control of elections in some battleground states. The conspiracy theory has also inspired terrorism and multiple murders, as well as providing the inspiration for a number of Capitol rioters. So, QAnon is back. Q is back. Guess who's back again. Q is back. Don't tell your friends. Q is back. Nah. No, truth. Nah. I thought we were done with this QAnon stuff. I thought that Donald Trump losing would bring it into this conspiracy. Y'all know I'm open to consider anything, and on the paranormal segment of this show, we often talk about conspiracy theories and why people believe them and if there are grains of truth in them or not. And let me just tell you, listen to me. Take it from me, your humble correspondent. You already told me online I'm a journalist. We did the polling. You said I'm a journalist. And I've told you before, I did not vote for Donald Trump. I did not vote for Joe Biden. I'm a registered independent. I have voted on both sides of the aisle. I want what's best for our country. But if you believe that this person posting online is Q, is the one who really knows what's going on in this world and in our country, you need to reassess your critical thinking skills and come back to reality. And I'm saying it to you out of a place of love. I want you to come back to reality. Because not one of the things that Q claims was going to happen ever happened. Donald Trump lost the election. No storm that you've been waiting on has ever come. Hillary Clinton has not been rounded up and taken to Guantanamo Bay. even if these politicians were arrested, there would not be military tribunals or public executions. That's not how things happen in this country. And you got to ask yourself, do you really want to align yourself with people like the QAnon shaman? The shirtless vegan man that wore some Viking horns and ran up in the Capitol with a giant spear or something. I'm telling you, as somebody that has been there for the whole QAnon phenomenon, it's just not true. It's just not true, okay? And all it really is a whole bunch of people who are LARPing. It was LARPing wrapped in an American flag. If you don't know what LARPing is, it's live action role playing. It's a game, and it's a game that became dangerous. And the reason why it is believable is because our world is in such an upside down place right now. And because there's so much volatility in our American political institutions and systems. And because the top 1% of our nation is getting richer and richer and richer, and the middle class is disappearing. Because politics have become so partisan that you're either an R or a D and you root for your team no matter what, and you don't have the ability anymore as a regular person to say, hey, some of this stuff that's happening over here on my side is pretty lame, and I don't agree with it. We've lost that ability. And here comes QAnon saying you can be a part of something bigger than yourself, something that we're all hungry for. And here's QAnon that comes along and says that hatred that you have for certain people is in fact warranted, and you are correct. Here comes QAnon that says, don't you want to protect our children? Yeah, people do want to do that. Here comes QAnon that says, don't you love your country? People go, yeah, I want to protect the children. I love our country. I hate Hillary Clinton. Tell me more. I've told the story on the show before about how there was a few months in there leading up to the election of Joe Biden, when Biden and Trump were going head to head, where I was briefly a right-wing social media influencer. And it was really more of a social experiment. I wasn't posting anything hateful. I wasn't being over the top angry or rude. But I was posting a lot of these memes and far-right stories and talking points, and just seeing polls that people could vote on, just seeing what would happen, seeing who would follow it, trying to get an idea, a pulse of what was going on that side of things leading up to the election, because I was interested and curious. It's taken me a year and a half on this show, putting out 42 episodes, to get over 5,000 followers on Twitter. When I was posting that nonsense, I was over 5,000 followers in a month and a half. I had 3 times the amount of followers on social media then that I do now. And a lot of the people that I interacted with, a lot of the people that I saw on social media were QAnon followers to a T. People who completely subscribed to everything, every single Q drop. They thought it was all true. And I saw how it became all-encompassing for these people, and how it divided them from their family and their friends, how it gave them such a bleak view of the world around them, and filled them with anger instead of hope, and dissatisfaction instead of joy. And I saw how a lot of people that felt like they didn't have a place to fit were finding a community. And all of those things together, mixed in with some misinformation, is a dangerous recipe. And I don't know what the FBI is up to. I don't know what the Secret Service is up to, but I'm just telling you, I told my wife, I told some of my friends and people close to me leading up to January 6th that, hey, this isn't going to be good. According to the posts I'm seeing on Twitter, people are going to show up in mass, and they think that they're going to get this thing overturned. And I had some level of concern about what may go down on that day. And I'm a nobody. I have a friend whose mother is a full-on QAnon conspirator, and it's damaged her standing in her community and her relationships with her friends, her relationships with her children, because it all turns She's posting these things. She's saying that they're true. She's saying that this is going to happen, this is going to happen, and none of it happens. Are there people in the Democratic Party in the world of finance who are pedophiles? Yes. Also on the Republican side. Are there people with a lot of power and influence in our world that are working together to pull the strings, to control their sphere of influence, to use their power in ways that benefit them? Of course there are. But there aren't children being trafficked in tunnels underneath the White House. And our entire government is not set up to protect this secretive cabal. There are shady things that happen. We do want to keep our children safe. There's just a kernel of truth in the fact that there is a whole lot of this stuff, Jeffrey Epstein and things that are going on in our world that we don't know much about. There's just such a kernel of truth there that when somebody takes that kernel of truth, claims to have insider knowledge, speaks with authority, is angry about all the same things you're angry about, and hates all the same people you hate, there's something about that attracts people. And I'm asking you, I'm begging you, if you are a QAnon person, just consider for a minute if it's making your life any better. Consider for a minute that maybe you got this wrong. Consider for a minute if any of those things predicted have actually come true. I think it's pretty obvious that Ron Watkins is Q. I don't know if he started off as Q, but at some point he became Q. And I don't think this return of Q has much to do with the Supreme Court. I think it has more to do with the fact that Ron Watkins is losing in his political campaign. He thought that he would win. He's not winning. He's bored. He wants to be known. He wants to have influence. And this is one way that he can do that. And the guy is reclusive. He's a weird fellow. He reminds me of Kip Dynamite. You remember Napoleon Dynamite? You remember his brother Kip? He loves technology, but not as much as you and me. He loves technology always and forever. That guy. Ron Watkins is Kip Dynamite, but minus the swag. He's Kip Dynamite, but doesn't get invited to the barbecue. He's not a military insider. Donald Trump did not get recruited to run for president by the military to save the world. He's not your Lord. He's not your Savior. He's a flawed man that was a president that did some things that people liked, did some things that made people angry, who has a lot of money, and who's out for himself. Not saying he has no care for his country, but I'm just saying he's not your Savior. JFK Jr. is not coming back. Let it go. Make like Elsa and let it go. Get a grip of reality. Take it from me. Our next story in the world of politics, billionaire oligarch called Putin's favorite industrialist says destroying Ukraine would be a colossal mistake. Oleg Deripaska, I love Russian names. I already told you I can't keep a straight face when on the news they're like, how do we stop Putin? Take you some gas X. Oleg Deripaska. That sounds like an SNL character. Oleg Deripaska. A billionaire aluminum tycoon and close Vladimir Putin ally spoke out against the war in Ukraine on Tuesday while speaking with local journalists, suggesting there would be no winner following Russia's invasion. Deripaska, described by some as Putin's favorite industrialist, also lamented the economic impact of the invasion and subsequent sanctions, which he said have rolled back progress made by international business partnerships. I'm troubled by how quickly we abandoned everything that was achieved economically in the 90s. Then we abandoned everything that we achieved in the 2000s. And now we're sitting and waiting for victory. Victory of what? Whose victory? Reuters reported, Deripaska said to a group of reporters in Moscow. The Russian oligarch who faces sanctions by the United States, Britain, and the EU has become more vocal about his opposition to the war since the early days of the invasion, but was careful not to speak poorly of the Russian leader. Prominent critics of Putin were poisoned and killed under suspicious circumstances prior to the invasion. I think that destroying Ukraine would be a colossal mistake, including for us, Reuters reported, Deripaska said. So, I think this is actually a big deal. And again, we're going to cover things like the war in Ukraine, inflation, all the things happening, but we're going to do it in a different way. I checked, I looked around, I didn't see this on any of the cable news broadcasts except for one quick mention on CNN. And this is a big deal. This is Putin's guy. This is a man that is a billionaire, a Russian oligarch, a very important and prominent person when it comes to international business in Russia. He's had sanctions put on him by the U.S., Britain, and the EU. And even though he didn't mention Putin by name, he certainly called out his decision-making when it comes to this war. And my hopes are that it's the start of something. Because that's what it's going to take in order for this defiant, egomaniacal leader like Putin to actually back off. It's going to take a conglomerate of powerful people in Russia saying, hey, we're not going to stand for this anymore. It's either going to take that, it's going to take Ukraine completely capitulating, which they will not, or it's going to take an all-out war. And we don't want any part of that either. I don't think Oleg is a hero. It's obvious that his motivation, at least in part, is financial. But sometimes good things come from people who are motivated for the wrong reasons also. And the economic effects of this war on Russia, on the Ukraine, and even across the globe is stacking up. Nobody wins from this. It's not good for anybody. And like we said before, it's hard to really make sense of all of the facts because the way that this is being covered. Far-right news outlets are saying, of course, Putin invaded. What choice did he have? There's missiles in every direction due to NATO expansion, all pointed toward him. On the far left, Vladimir Putin is Adolf Hitler reincarnated, and the truth is somewhere in the middle. But it's certainly true that the people of Ukraine are suffering, that the people of Russia did not ask for this, and that no one is benefiting from this war. I'm not a fan of war anywhere. And I think that Mr. Oleg better be careful. He might wind up with no legs. Because speaking out against Vladimir Putin is an exceptionally dangerous task. So I do give credit to him for saying something. I hope that it leads to more oligarchs, billionaires, tycoons speaking out on behalf of ending the war. I hope that sanctions are going to do what they were intended to do, and I hope this thing is over soon. We'll keep an ear to the ground and bring you the news as it develops. Our last story in the world of politics: Jaws scene-stealing kid actor becomes police chief on Martha's Vineyard, where film was made. A scene-stealing kid from the film Jaws is now the police chief on the island where the film was made. Jonathan Searle was selected this week as the police chief of Oak Bluff, Massachusetts, a small town on the island of Martha's Vineyard. It was on that island set in the fictional town of Amity that the 1975 film was made. I'm clearly elated and I'm humbled and honored to have been offered this position, he told newspaper The Vineyard Gazette. It's something I've been working toward my whole career. An island native, Jonathan, 56, was a boy when Steven Spielberg's production starring Roy Scheider and Richard Dreyfuss disembarked with its mechanical shark. The film, based on the 1974 novel by Peter Benchley, centered on Amity's police chief and a marine biologist who were trying to save residents from a killer shark. Many locals were cast to make the film, which ran way over budget and behind in its production schedule. Jonathan and his brother Steven both played boy swimmer with cardboard fin, young pranksters who donned snorkels and pretended to be the shark wreaking havoc on the island. They cleared the waters with beachgoers fleeing to the shore screaming. Their joke ended when they came up for air and had multiple boatloads of police officers with guns pointed at their face. Jonathan pointed at his sibling with an "it was his idea" reaction. That particular scene was filmed by what is now called the Jaws Bridge on the border of neighboring towns Edgerton and Oaks Bluff. It's now a famous landmark on the island known for its recreational jumpers. Jonathan didn't pursue an acting career after his role in the iconic film, but instead followed in his father's footsteps. George Searle was a police officer in Edgerton beginning in 1966 and served as police chief from 81 to 95. In 1986, Jonathan became a police officer also in Edgerton and began rising in the ranks. In 2008, he made headlines for busting a man who started a shark hoax on the island to scare beachgoers. Oaks Bluff, where Spike Lee, Sonny Hostin, and Henry Louis Gates Jr. own homes, is a small town with about 5,300 year-round residents. In the summer, however, the population of the entire island, which is off the coast of Cape Cod and just 100 square miles, swells in its 6 towns from 20,000 to around 200,000 with summer visitors. The fact that the Jaws kid prankster is now the actual police chief in the town where the film was made has spawned headlines around the globe and isn't lost on Jonathan. I'm finding the whole thing quite funny myself, he told the New York Post. However, he told the outlet that his focus is on catching real-life criminals on land. So I thought that would be a fun way to end our political news segment, to talk about one of my favorite movies, Jaws, and how the boy that was pulling the pranks is now the real-life sheriff of the town. That's pretty cool. I think pretty much any of us that grew up watching that movie, because of that film, every time you ever go in the ocean, you at least have a passing thought, is there a shark nearby that I'm not seeing? And I've been to the beach on multiple occasions when kids had the same thing that dude had in the movie, where you strap it to your head. It looks like a shark fin. At least now they make them small enough to where you go, hey, that's probably not a real shark. But yeah, that kid is all grown up. He's 56 years old, and he is the police chief. So good for him. Something I'm going to get to be a part of later in this summer is Jaws related. I'm going to get to go to a pool party where we're in the water and we have the movie projected on the screen and watch it from the water. Pretty cool. It'd be even better if it was in the ocean, but hey, I'll take it. There's so much going on in the world that's hard to make sense of. That's a lot of tough news out there today. I thought that we would end our political news segment with something a little lighter and a little more fun, a little bit of Jaws history for you there. And that's all the news in the world of politics. Let's switch to this, the news in the world of sports, and let's hit the headlines. Deshaun Watson's hearing has ended after 3 days of testimony. NFL and Ice Cube partner on economic equity plan. Baker Mayfield says both he and the Browns have moved on. NFL hires first executive dedicated to sports betting. Ex-NBA point guard Rod Strickland hired as Long Island men's basketball coach. Ex-number 1 recruit Amani Bates leaves Memphis for Eastern Michigan. Mississippi State extends head football coach Mike Leach through 2025. And finally, ACC drops divisions starting in 2023. We're going to talk NBA draft and free agency, a lot to cover there. But first, I want to start with some news in the world of college athletics that broke yesterday. According to reports, UCLA and USC are set to leave the Pac-12, instead joining the Big Ten, possibly as early as 2024. This story is a big deal that sent shockwaves throughout the sporting world yesterday. It's on par with the Kevin Durant news that we will talk about momentarily. And it seems to be the direction that college athletics, specifically college football, are heading in. This is a snowball going down a hill, and it is not stopping. I think that we can safely say now that we are quickly on the road to 3 to 4 power conferences, 2 or 3 large power conferences that are on a separate level from all other Division I schools and that do their own thing. This was certainly a shock to me that these two schools, these California schools, would leave the Pac-12, where they are 2 of the more prominent universities, and head to the Big Ten, which is mostly Midwestern schools. This move does not make any geographical sense or historical sense, but it makes a lot of sense when it comes to the current landscape of college football and what direction things are headed. And it makes me wonder what it means for the Pac-12. This is a big boon for the Big Ten. No doubt this is the Big Ten's direct response to the SEC adding Oklahoma and Texas. And USC and UCLA bring a lot to the table. USC is one of the top 5 college football programs historically in the country. just as UCLA is for basketball. They're great academic institutions. They have a lot of money, a lot of history, a lot of celebrity on their side. So from a branding perspective, it makes a lot of sense, and it's a big boon for the Big Ten, but it does possibly irreparable damage to the Pac-12. And it kind of makes me wonder now what will happen to schools like Oregon State and Washington State, what will happen to Colorado and Arizona State, these schools that are good schools that have a following, but that are now in a conference that completely lacks any cachet. They may not have a seat at the table anymore with the big boys that will not be a part of setting policy and making decisions moving forward. As much as this is a good thing for the Big Ten, it's that much a bad thing for the Big 12 and the ACC. The Big 12 that is already bleeding and already lost Texas and Oklahoma, who moved quickly to replace those schools by adding BYU and Central Florida. The ACC, who has Florida State and Miami in the thick of a rebuild, who really only have Clemson as a team that can challenge for a playoff spot. Will these conferences even be sustainable? Will they be competitive in the world of college football? In this new world of super conferences and NIL and transfer portal, can they continue to compete as a part of conferences that no longer can stack up to the SEC and the Big Ten? And that's what this move does. This move sets the Big Ten on par with the SEC in many ways, raises their level of play and their ability to recruit. It's going to trickle down and help some of the mid-tier teams in the Big Ten. And it's going to be awful for the Big 12 and the ACC and the Pac-12. And it may lead to more realignment. It may lead to Dabo Swinney and Clemson saying, hey, is there a spot for me in another conference? Miami saying, hey, we're in the South. Could we be a part of the SEC? Florida State saying, we already have a rivalry with Florida. Put us in there. This is a great move for the Big Ten. And I understand it from a business standpoint for UCLA and USC and a competitive standpoint, but that doesn't mean that I have to like it, because I'm not sure that this is a good thing for the overall health of college football moving forward. And you can call me a traditionalist. You can say that I'm making a mountain out of a molehill, but in my estimation, all the things that make college football great and that make the fan bases rabid are on the verge of eroding before our eyes. College football has already become in the last decade a more regional sport, and this is not going to help. It might become more popular in Los Angeles. You might have more people from outside the state of California visiting UCLA and USC, but it really does damage in the big picture to college football on the West Coast. And it's going to come with some unintended consequences. I think USC under Lincoln Riley will be fine, but I'm not so sure that UCLA is going to have such an easy time competing in football in the Big Ten. Just when it looked like they started to build momentum under Chip Kelly and the Pac-12 coming into this season, they might have a pretty good year, and in another year or two, they're going to have a lot more competition. And for every road game, they're going to have to fly across the country. Think about that. Not just once or twice a year, not just a couple-hour flight here and there, not a bus trip, but cross-country flights and overnight stays and multiple days away from home for every single road game. Different climates, time change. All of these things have an effect on your body and on performance. And over the course of the year, for a school that already struggles to recruit when it comes to football, that has a good tradition and that's on the way up, but that is going to be facing much more stiff competition, I'm not sure it's a recipe for success. The money is certainly going to be there. This move is going to put the TV contract through the roof for the Big Ten, but it may do damage to the overall health of college football. We might not see teams like Cincinnati that have done things the right way, that have built a program, that have been competitive, that have beat the big boys, get an invite to the playoffs, if we just have 2 or 3 super conferences that are running everything. We might be looking at a world where there's Division I football and then there's the super conferences above them. A world where college football continues to resemble professional football more and more and more. And I'm not sure I'm here for that. I love the fact that college kids can roll out of bed, walk 3 blocks, and go to the football stadium. I love that they can hop in a SUV and carpool a couple of hours to see a road game. But if Wisconsin is traveling to UCLA, who's filling that stadium? Boosters, people that can afford the flights, not college kids. And I'm glad the athletes are getting some money with NIL. I'm glad that they're getting a small piece of the pie. But I don't want them to become employees, because employees can be hired and fired. And there can be expectations set of employees that have little to do with academics, little to do with figuring life out. And college should still be about those things as well. If you're traveling 6 and 7 times across the country in the middle of a semester, how's that going to affect your academic ability and what you're learning? Most of these kids aren't going to make it in the NFL. Most of them need to take advantage of the time that they have at a university to learn something that's going to benefit them in whatever field they choose outside of football. How will super conferences affect that? How will it affect the playoffs? In a few weeks, I hope to have somebody on to talk college football with us and go over this a little bit more in depth. But my initial response is, wow. I look forward to seeing USC come to the big house and Ohio State go out to play USC. That will be a lot of fun. But there are bigger implications here as well, and I'm not sure I'm a fan of those. Let's move on to some NBA, and before we get to free agency news, let's recap the NBA draft. The Magic took Paolo Banchero with the number 1 overall pick. Chet Holmgren goes 2 to OKC. Jabari Smith, who we thought was the best player in the draft, goes 3rd overall to Houston. Keegan Murray goes 4th to Sacramento. Jaden Ivey from Purdue 5th to the Pistons. Some other draft picks of note: Walker Kessler went 22nd overall to Minnesota. I like that pick for Minnesota. Nikola Jovic goes 27th overall to Miami. Not Nikola Djokovic, but Nikola Jovic. And yes, they are from the same country and only a couple towns over, which is pretty funny. And the Thunder, who had 1,000 draft picks, they drafted 2 guys named Jalen Williams. They drafted Jalen Williams from Santa Clara and Jalen Williams from Arkansas. I'm not sure any NBA team has ever drafted 2 players with the same name in the same draft. That's absurd. That was my favorite part of the entire draft. That's hilarious. They drafted one Jalen, Jalen, one Jalen, Jaylin. They got 2 Jalen Williams now, and I'm here for it. This is how we saw the draft go. These are our top 5 draft classes. 5th overall, the Detroit Pistons, who took point guard Jaden Ivey from Purdue with the 5th pick, and they took center Ismail Kamagate out of Paris in the 2nd round. Don't know much about the guy from Paris. He might be a draft and stash type player who comes over in a year or two. I'm not sure. But I love the Jaden Ivey pick. Jaden Ivey, to me, was the 3rd best player in this draft. I think that he'll be a great fit alongside Cade Cunningham and has a lot of talent. So the Pistons, in our mind, had the 5th best draft. 4th, we have the Indiana Pacers. I think I'm higher on the Indiana Pacers draft class than anybody else that I saw. They took shooting forward Benedict Mathurin from Arizona with the 6th overall pick. They took point guard Andrew Nembhard from Gonzaga with the 1st pick in the 2nd round. And then they took point guard Hugo Besson with the 28th pick in the 2nd round. I told you in our draft coverage before the NBA draft that I liked Benedict Mathurin's game. I think that he has a lot of potential and a lot of room to grow. I think he was a good selection. And I really like the pick of Andrew Nembhard. This is a kid that has paid his dues at Gonzaga, that was coached well, that really developed a game. And I think that he's going to stick in the NBA. I don't see him as an all-star, but I do see him as your first point guard off the bench that can run the show with a second unit. I think he's going to develop into a player that can get into the paint, that can create for his teammates, that will play defense. And I have the Indiana Pacers with the 4th overall draft class. 3rd overall, I have the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Thunder, of course, took Chet Holmgren from Gonzaga with the 2nd overall pick. They took shooting guard Jalen Williams from Santa Clara at 12. Shooting forward Peyton Watson from UCLA at 30, and center Jalen Williams from Arkansas in the 2nd round. Look, I'm not crazy about Chet Holmgren. I know that there is potential and that there is upside, but I have a lot of questions. And as somebody that looks like a praying mantis with a beard who was always underestimated on the basketball court all the way through my freshman year of college because of my size, I hate to be the one to say it, but I have questions about his physique. He's 7'3", so he's going to be able to get his shot off, but can he rebound? Can he play defense? Can his body hold up? Can he add weight? Can he add strength? I think he certainly has a chance to be a very good NBA player. But I watched him play in college, and he was rarely the best player on the floor in his freshman season. I just don't see him as a generational talent. But I do like what the Thunder are doing in getting a lot of athletes who are long and who can shoot. I love the pick of Jalen Williams, not the shooting guard, but Jalen Williams, the center from Arkansas. He's a do-everything type player. He'll do the dirty work and rebound and take charges and play defense. He brings a lot of passion. I would have loved to have seen the Warriors or the Hawks, either of my two teams, pick up a kid like that. And I think that Peyton Watson from UCLA is an interesting player as well. I have Oklahoma City's draft class ranking 3rd overall. 2nd overall, I have the Sacramento Kings, who took power forward Keegan Murphy from Iowa 4th overall and shooting guard Jaden Hardy from the G League Ignite in the 2nd round. And I love what the Kings did. The Sacramento Kings have had a bunch of picks high in the draft. They've made some good selections over the years. They've missed a couple times. It hasn't shown up on the court yet. They haven't been able to put things together, but based on their picks, they have to be heading in the right direction because they're doing some things right. Keegan Murphy was one of my favorite players in this draft. I had him as the 4th overall player in the draft. He went 4th overall, and I think he could wind up being the 2nd best player in this draft. I really do. I think that he's just going to be steady and consistent. I kind of compare him to an Al Horford type player. That might seem like an odd comparison because he's a bit more of a slasher. He's quicker. But Al Horford is a steady player. Al Horford might not be a Hall of Famer, but he's a Hall of Great. A Hall of Very Good type player. A guy that's going to average double figures in points. It's going to be a consistent double-double guy that plays defense, that does things the right way, that can shoot from the outside. That's what I see in Keegan Murphy's future. I think he's going to continue to develop offensively. I think you're not going to see it maybe right away this year, but next year you're going to go, wait a minute, who is this guy for Sacramento? Where did he come from? And I really like the pick of Jaden Hardy in the 2nd round. I think Sacramento got a steal there. This is a kid that bypassed college, that played for the Ignite, who needs some seasoning, that needs to play at a high level, but it's going to get his opportunity in Sacramento, and that could develop into a steal in this draft. And the number 1 overall draft class in my mind was the Houston Rockets. The Rockets had 2 picks. They took forward Jabari Smith from Auburn 3rd overall and forward Tari Eason from LSU at 17. 2 first-round picks and 2 guys that I think can flat-out play and that will be contributing players this season for the Rockets. In my mind, it's clear that Jabari Smith is the best player in this draft. I understand what Orlando is doing and why they picked Banchero. I understand how he fits their system and what they're trying to do. But Jabari Smith is on a different level talent-wise than the rest of this draft class. He's 6'10" with a smooth jump shot. He can shoot off the pin downs. He can shoot off the dribble. He's got to work on his handle a little bit. He has a lot of potential defensively. He was the best player on the floor almost every game that he played this year for Auburn. He was the best player in this draft. Houston, he fell in your lap at 3. And you've got to be thrilled to add him to the nucleus and the core of young talent that you have accumulated over the last several years. To me, the Houston Rockets had the top draft class in this year's draft. So that's how I see things. Detroit 5, Indiana Pacers 4, OKC 3, Sacramento 2, and the Houston Rockets with the best draft. How did you see things? Where did I get it right? Where did I get it wrong? Email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com and let me know. Find us on Twitter at intheshed4. Who did you think had the best draft class? I would love to hear from you. All right, let's talk some NBA free agency. We are on day 2 of NBA free agency, and it is wild as always. Already, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, Nikola Jokic, Karl Anthony Towns, and Ja Morant have all signed huge extensions to stay with their current teams. Nicholas Batum has signed with the Clippers, Malik Monk to the Kings, Jalen Brunson for like $100 million to the Knicks. JaVale McGee signed a multi-year deal with the Mavericks. My cousin and NBA champion Juan Toscano Anderson has gone to the Lakers, PJ Tucker to the 76ers, and Kyle Anderson to the Timberwolves. Notice I said that Juan Toscano Anderson is my cousin. Kyle Anderson, we not related. I don't claim slow-mo. With all the craziness that has gone on so far in free agency, there are two moves that I think have gone under the radar a bit that deserve to be mentioned. The first is that the Milwaukee Bucks have signed Joe Ingles. You might be going, why is that a big deal? Joe Ingles has been a consistent contributor for very good Utah Jazz basketball teams the last several seasons, and Milwaukee is only a season away from winning the NBA championship. This is a team that, had they had Chris Middleton, probably would have defeated the Boston Celtics and returned to the NBA Finals. And yes, Joe Ingles is coming off of an injury, but assuming he gets to full health, I think this is a terrific signing for the Milwaukee Bucks that instantly makes them better. Because it's another guy that can handle the ball, that can create his own shot, that can knock down shots from deep. That's an underrated team defender. And when you have Giannis, what do you need to surround him with? You need to surround him with playmakers and with shooters. And Joe Ingles is both of those things. He's a guy that if Chris Middleton is not healthy, if he's on the bench, he can come in, he can knock down open jump shots, he can bring the ball up, he can handle it. I think that's an underrated signing for the Milwaukee Bucks. It won't get talked about very many places, but it's going to pay dividends if you are a Bucks fan. And for the other move that I feel is underrated, I'm taking you to the ATL. I'm talking about Waffle House on every corner. Because the Atlanta Hawks pulled off something that is very interesting to me in trading not John Collins, as was reports, but instead Gallinari, a bench forward, and a few first-round picks to the San Antonio Spurs for all-star guard DeJounte Murray. So now the Hawks have a backcourt of Trae Young and DeJounte Murray. Two all-stars who are 25 and under that can handle the ball, that can score. And this is going to be an interesting pairing to watch moving forward. My Hawks that had a tremendously disappointing year coming off of making the Eastern Conference Finals where Trae Young looked like one of the best 10 players alive during the playoffs. And they got out to a slow start this season that they never really quite recovered from. They played better after the All-Star break and at least made the playoffs. But they couldn't compete with Miami. Miami put the clamps on Trae Young, and there was nobody else. And so this is GM Travis Slink's answer to that, to get DeJounte Murray, somebody that can put Trae Young off the ball at times, somebody that can get to the cup, that plays very good defense in the backcourt. He's not the greatest outside shooter. I think he shot like 32% from three last season, but it certainly raises the talent level. One of the things that I cited after the season for Atlanta was they've got to improve at the two. Kevin Huerter is too inconsistent. Bogdanovich is too injury-plagued for either of them to be the starter on a team that wants to make the conference finals or an NBA finals. Yes, the Hawks gave away 3 first-round picks, which is a lot, but they took a big swing. And it's going to be fun to see how and if it pays off. I don't think they're done. They're still looking to trade Kevin Huerter. They're looking at options for John Collins. Clint Capella may be on the trading block. It's going to be interesting to see what the Hawks do. They have a lot of young talent. This is a pivotal season for Nate McMillan as head coach. He's done an admirable job, but the Hawks have got to get off to a better start this next season. They've been plagued the last 2 seasons by starting off so slow that when playoffs come around, they're an 8 to 10 seed when they should be 4th. So I like what they did in at least trying to address those needs, adding a player like DeJounte Murray who has a lot of talent. And those are 2 moves that I think have gone under the radar so far. Okay, we have put it off long enough. Let's address the big story in NBA free agency, the elephant in the room, the thin man. Kevin Durant has let Nets ownership know that he would like to be traded. There was a lot of question about whether or not Kyrie Irving would opt into his $37 million player option for the season. He did. And the very next day, KD said, I'm bouncing. I'm out of here. This will go down in history as the greatest failure of any quote-unquote super team that there has ever been. The Brooklyn Nets, did I say New Jersey a minute ago? I don't know. The Brooklyn Nets had Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden in their prime and won 1 playoff series in 3 seasons. That's hard to fathom. Like, it's almost impossible to do that if you were trying. And Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving decided to go to Brooklyn together. They decided after one season that they needed a new coach, even though Kenny Atkinson had done an admirable job. To get those guys, they had to trade away all of their depth and their young talent and their core. They brought in a coach of their choosing, Steve Nash, that had no experience. And Kyrie Irving was just like, I'm not coming to work like 2/3 of the time. And don't forget that even before the whole vaccine snafu, Kyrie Irving was already kind of playing and kind of not. And I get that there was a lot happening in the world and a lot of stuff that affects a lot of us deeply, but I still get up and go to work. And I don't make millions of dollars at my job. We've said it before, but I'll say it again. A lot of times your greatest ability is your availability, and Kyrie Irving just has not been available. He pushed James Harden out. He wasn't there for his team. And he burned the whole thing to the ground. And now Kevin Durant wants out. NBA free agency is like no other. It's wild. And I think we learned some things about Kevin Durant, not necessarily things that we didn't know, but suspicions have been confirmed. Kevin Durant is a mercenary. At this point, it's clear. That's what he is. He's a mercenary. He's supremely talented, but he's not a leader, and he's not a culture builder. And I'm not saying that Kevin Durant is a bad leader. I'm not saying that he's a bad influence. He's a glue guy. He's a guy that can fit in pretty much any locker room. That you can put him there and that he can blend in, that he can do his thing. He'll score points. He'll be a good teammate. I'm not saying he's not a good teammate, but I am saying that he's not a leader. That if your team doesn't already have a strong culture, he's not going to be the one to create it. He's not Steph Curry. He's not LeBron James. And he thought that he was going to leave Golden State and that he was going to do his own thing. He was tired of all the chatter that he needed Steph Curry, that he joined the team that beat him, that he joined a team that had already won more games than any other team in NBA history. He was going to go do his own thing in Brooklyn. And it didn't work out. And a lot of the blame has to fall on Kyrie Irving, but we have to be honest about Kevin Durant's role in this as well. Because it's not just the will to win that's important, but it's the will to prepare to win. There's no doubt in my mind that Kevin Durant is a winner, that he possesses the will to win. He's played fantastic in big moments in playoff series and in NBA Finals. He was the most dominant scorer on the court in those NBA Finals with Golden State. When he was a part of Golden State's team, he was an elite defender for the first and only time in his career. He did marvelous things in the playoffs as a member of the OKC Thunder. There's no doubt that Kevin Durant has a will to win. But it's not just the will to win that's important, it's the will to prepare to win. And part of preparing to win is making good decisions, making sound decisions, putting yourself in position to perform well. And while Kevin Durant might do that as far as his game is concerned, and his skill set, and his body, he's failed to do that when it comes to where he finds himself. He was the man in OKC. And would have been the greatest player in the history of the franchise, still probably will be. And he left to go join a Warriors team to be a part of a dynasty and had one of the elite runs. Didn't like how things worked out with his injury. Got upset because Draymond Green called him some mean names. And he made the worst trade in NBA history. Trading Golden State in the Bay Area for Brooklyn. Trading Steve Kerr for Steve Nash. And trading Steph Curry for Kyrie Irving. I've compared Kyrie Irving to Aaron Rodgers on several occasions on this show because they're both people who are supremely talented but who lack leadership, and I've started to realize that is not a good comparison. It's not Kyrie Irving that compares to Aaron Rodgers. It's Kevin Durant. Because Kevin Durant, like Aaron Rodgers, is an elite all-time talent. But are we so sure that Aaron Rodgers really makes those around him better? Does Aaron Rodgers really contribute as a leader to a winning culture? Or does he just show up and play really well? Last year, the Packers were the number 1 overall seed, hosted a playoff game. Aaron Rodgers, back-to-back MVPs, didn't amount to a whole lot. And the more that Kevin Durant's career goes on, that's kind of what we're seeing. That's kind of becoming the book on KD. When it comes to talent and ability to score, he's a top 10 player overall. But does he really impact a team's culture? Can he be a leader in the locker room as the best player? Or is he just a mercenary? There's a lot of talk about what will happen now. What team will Kevin Durant go to? Where will he be traded? The reports are that he has listed the Suns and the Heat as the two teams that he would most like to go to, but it would take a lot for either of those two teams to get him. The Suns have already re-upped on Devin Booker. They're not trading him. And if you're Brooklyn, who do you want from the Suns outside of Devin Booker? Can Phoenix convince DeAndre Ayton to do a sign and trade? Why? He can just go sign a contract. You're not trading Kevin Durant for Mikal Bridges and picks. The Heat, sure, they can offer Tyler Hero, but they'd have to do some extra maneuvering to even be able to include Bam Adebayo on a trade. If I were the Brooklyn Nets, I would not care where Kevin Durant wanted to be traded. My focus would be, where can I get the most talent back? And if it wound up to be a team like the Washington Wizards or the Atlanta Hawks or somewhere that Kevin Durant had no interest playing, I would not care. I would send him and I would get back as much as I can, because I've got to look at my franchise's future. They went all in on Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, and those dudes did nothing and are now bailing. I put out a poll on Twitter, if you're the Nets, which package would you rather have for Kevin Durant? And I listed some options that I'm hearing bantied about online. The first option is DeAndre Ayton, Mikal Bridges, and picks. The second is Tobias Harris, Matisse Thybulle, and Tyrese Maxey. The third option is Michael Porter Jr., Bones Highland, and Aaron Gordon. And the last option is Zion Williamson, Herb Jones, and picks from the Pelicans. So far, 50% of people say Zion, Herb Jones, and picks, followed by 25% going with the Suns package of Ayton, Bridges, and picks. 21% say Harris, Thybulle, and Maxey, with only 4% saying Michael Porter Jr., Bones Highland, and Aaron Gordon. Apparently, the Zion thing is not happening. I don't know that they would have much interest in getting rid of their young superstar anyway, but I just see where they have signed him to a rookie extension. But that would be a team that I would keep an eye on and that I would look to if I were Brooklyn. Maybe you could get some combination of Brandon Ingram, Jackson Hayes, Herb Jones, and picks. They're going to have to get talent back. If they're going to trade Kevin Durant, they're going to have to get talent back that allows them to be competitive right now in the East as well as picks. And if I were Brooklyn, I would find a way to send Kevin Durant to Washington. I would punish him. I would punish him and Kyrie both. I would relegate them to the worst places. Sorry, Washington fans. I would send them to the worst places in the NBA. Kyrie Irving thinks that he's going to the Lakers. Why LeBron would want that headache again, I don't know. I'm seeing reports today on all of these morning shows that the Lakers could package Russell Westbrook and Anthony Davis for a package of Kyrie Irving and KD. Sure, if I'm the Lakers, I do that in a heartbeat. But if I'm Brooklyn, I want no part of Russell Westbrook. And injury-riddled Anthony Davis, who hasn't played basketball in a meaningful way since winning the championship, I'm not trading Kevin Durant for that. Kyrie Irving is an all-time talent who completely lacks awareness, who doesn't play well with others, and who has squandered his place in history. Maybe things will turn around. Kevin Durant still has an opportunity in his career. He can go somewhere, he can win some titles, he can be a good teammate, he can turn things around. The narrative can change for him. But as long as Kyrie Irving has a pen and he's authoring his own legacy, it's not going to be the one that he thinks it is or that he wants. And that's my take on that. Who do you think will end up with Kevin Durant? How quickly will it happen? What does Brooklyn do with Kyrie Irving? Let us know. Email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Again, that's intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Let us know on Twitter at intheshed4. That's all for the world of sports. Let's switch to this, the news in the world of the paranormal, where our first story takes us to an ultrasound. Yeah, we going from the man baby Kyrie Irving to an ultrasound. Ultrasound reveals 2-year-old teeth and hair growing inside scared mom's uterus. This sounds like a horror movie. A woman who is experiencing abnormal bleeding and abdominal pains made a shocking discovery at her gynecologist, and now TikTokers are saying they'll never forget stumbling across her story. The woman gained over 1.7 million views and 300,000 likes when she shared her stunning diagnosis with the world. While we've seen shocking medical mysteries go viral before, TikTok users say this is one of the strangest stories they've ever heard. And now, much like the mom who was horrified to discover hospital staff brought her the wrong baby not once but twice, this lady is encouraging all women to self-advocate for themselves at the doctor, especially when it comes to reproductive health. In her now viral video, Sandwich Bread, this is the world that we live in. I have to call this lady Sandwich Bread because that's her TikTok handle. Sandwich Bread. I'm a news show. We're reporting news. And I have to call this lady Sandwich Bread. 2022, you wild. In her now viral video, Sandwich Bread explained that 2 years after giving birth to her son Atlas, I'm just not gonna go there. It's her child. She's the mom. Why did you name your child Atlas? That is an object. That's not a name. It's not a name. It's a map. It's a map. She began developing strange symptoms. When her doctor suggested they perform an ultrasound, the young mom grew nervous, fearing that she was pregnant or had cancer. Man, it's hard out here for women. I feel for y'all. It's like, hey, something's happening, something abnormal is going on. Either I have a life growing inside me or I have cancer. That's terrifying. We ain't got to do nothing like that as men. And men, take care of your women and respect what they have to go through. Everything their body has to go through. Women, y'all phenomenal. And I'm just going to say that. Instead, Sandwich Bread was hit with shocking news. For the past 2 years, her body had been growing teeth and hair inside her uterus. She was informed it was a dermoid cyst, which is a growth of normal tissue enclosed in a pocket of cells. Occasionally, this growth can go on to develop bone, nerves, skin, sweat glands, or in Sandwich Bread's case, teeth and hair. Underscore what I just said before reading that sentence because holy Moses. In fact, her body had been working overtime on the tissue, developing it into 2 dermoid cysts, one chicken egg size and one the size of a pea. Her doctor explained that when her son was still in utero, traces of fetal tissue separated from the developing fetus, which went on to become a dermoid cyst. So for 2 years now, I've had particles of my son growing in my uterus, Sandwich Bread said in shock to the camera. She then issued a viewer discretion to anyone watching her video and warned that she would be putting up a photo of a dermoid cyst, which seemed to horrify many TikTok users. You advised discretion for the photo, and I thought I understood, but let me tell you, I was not ready for that photo, one user joked. That was the most disturbing TikTok I've ever seen, one viewer wrote. Whoa, that is wild. I've never heard of this. You learn something new every day, another commented. I will never be able to forget this. I should have looked away, wrote another user. But while many viewers were shocked or grossed out by Sandwich Bread's video, many are thanking her for advocating for women. As I say, advocating, words are hard. For advocating for women's health and sharing her experience with the world. Now, the mom is encouraging everyone to seek medical attention if they're experiencing unusual symptoms and to self-advocate when they're at the doctor's office. As far as her strange cysts, she's named them Seymour and Archibald Winklet. And she'll be scheduling their removal in the coming months. She's not good at naming things, though, is all I'm saying. So, unfortunately, I have watched this TikTok video, and those vivid dreams I told you about earlier, pretty sure I'm going to have one of those tonight. I cannot believe that is something that was growing inside of a person. That is terrifying. I feel bad for Sandwich Bread, and hey, props to her for advocating for women's health and encouraging other people. If they got something from it, kudos to her. But do we have to share everything on TikTok and all of our personal business on social? I'm old school, okay? It's some things you maybe just keep to yourself. But she got a lot of views and a lot of followers, and she probably helped some people. But most of all, she just gave us images that we did not ask for. And despite the viewer discretion, I was not prepared for the teeth and the hair on Seymour. And I would like to see less. But here we are. So, yeah, that is the type of news that you come to In the Shed with Wes Anderson for. You will not hear news like this anywhere else. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, let's just, we're going to move on. I hope you're okay, Sandwich Bread. Word to Atlas. Word to Atlas. From an ultrasound, we go to River Grove, Illinois for our next story. Man reports black thing with wings near St. Joseph Cemetery in River Grove, Illinois. Lon Strickler of Phantoms and Monsters received the following report from a man who claimed he was riding in a car driven by his fiancée on April 20th at around 9 a.m. when he saw a strange black winged creature flying near St. Joseph Cemetery in River Grove, Illinois. I've lived in Franklin Park, Illinois for a few years now, and have been following all the Chicago Mothman sightings. I had a day off from work on April 20th this year, and my fiancé and I were driving on West Belmont Avenue going east around 9 a.m. You were on West Belmont Avenue, but you were going east. Wouldn't it be East Belmont? I guess you can go... I guess if the whole road is named West Belmont, I guess you could go east on it, but that's confusing to me. I'm not that smart a guy. I digress. I was looking out the window my fiancé was driving, and I saw over St. Joseph Cemetery flying high up this black thing. At first I thought it might have been a drone, but the way it was flying, I could tell it was not any kind of aircraft or bird that I've ever seen. It was all black, and I could see it had wings, but I couldn't see any other features, and it had no head. It wasn't flapping its wings either, it was just flying extremely fast at an angle. I yelled at my fiancée, "Do you see that?" She couldn't see it, it was almost gone, and plus she was driving. I said, I think that's the Mothman thing everyone is seeing, it has to be. But she dismissed it and said I was crazy. I really thought about not reporting it until this morning when I saw someone reported seeing 3 of these black things. The video is exactly what I saw, except it was only one that I saw, not 3 like the person and his daughter in Bensonville. I'm not an artist, but as the days were passing, I decided to draw what I saw. I've enclosed the pic I drew on my phone. It was just this black thing. I didn't take a picture or video because it would have been just a small dot with how fast it was flying into the clouds. Strickler noted that the witness was reluctant to add additional information because of his fiancée, but he was able to find out a few more details regarding the sighting, which he then added to the account. The report and video referenced by this witness are from a man who said that he was outside with his daughter in Bensonville, Illinois, when at approximately 4 p.m. on May 17th, they witnessed 3 human-shaped objects that looked like they had wings flying overhead. The villages of Bensonville and River Grove are both directly adjacent to O'Hare International Airport, which has been the epicenter of recent winged humanoid sightings in the Lake Michigan Mothman investigation, with over a dozen sighting reports coming from the airport itself since August of 2019, and many more reported in the surrounding communities. Reports from the larger investigation have come from every state bordering Lake Michigan and date back to 1957. In addition, both cases mentioned above bear a strong resemblance to one that took place in Chicago's Pilsen neighborhood in May of 2018. That sighting involved a man who was bicycling to work one afternoon when he saw what he would later describe to investigators as a bat-like creature resembling someone in a wingsuit, although the encounter did not mirror the seemingly paranormal aspects of some other winged humanoid cases or include any reported high strangeness. The man had a GoPro camera that was filming during the event attached to his bicycle helmet and helped the Singular Fortean Society isolate several stills of the creature from the video. The creature, upon examination of this evidence, appeared to be a bird. Investigator Tobias Wayland ultimately found the witness credible in that he showed no indication at all that he was attempting to hoax his sighting. Rather, the man seemed genuinely confused by what he had seen. As time passed, I'm still uncertain of what exactly I saw, the witness said of the experience. Certainly none of the birds I typically see flying are similar, but I'm increasingly more accepting to the idea that that could have been a very large migratory bird. Springtime sees an influx of large migratory birds such as cranes and herons into the upper Midwest, and it's possible that that has led to misidentifications, especially since studies have shown that some species are roosting more often in urban areas due to the destruction of their usual wetland habitats. This report constitutes the latest news in a string of Mothman sightings from within a few hundred-mile radius surrounding Lake Michigan, including every state bordering the Great Lake. These sightings ostensibly began in the spring of 2017, but more historical accounts are being reported as more people become aware of the phenomenon. 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 They generally take place in the evening or at night, often in or near a park or a natural area and around water. Witnesses consistently describe a large gray, brown, or black bat or bird-like creature, although in a small number of cases the creatures were described as insect-like, sometimes with glowing or reflective red, yellow, green, or orange eyes, and humanoid features such as arms and legs are often reported. Some witnesses have reported feeling intense fear and an aura of evil emanating from the creature they encountered. Many of the sightings are also of something seen only briefly or are described only as flying creatures with few details, which leaves open the possibility that a misidentified large bird, such as a heron or crane, or some type of anomalous avian species could explain some, although certainly not all, of the encounters. A number of associated high strangeness incidents have also occurred alongside the creature sightings. These include reports of UFOs, other anomalous flying creatures and mysterious humanoids, parapsychological phenomena, we already did the song, and bizarre events experienced by those investigating the sightings. Yeah, so there's been another sighting of some large winged creature in the general Chicago area. This is something that we have talked about on the show before, something that I find to be interesting. This particular article came from the Singular Fortean Society and Tobias and Emily Wayland, a group that kind of records and investigates these types of things. And I appreciate the way that they do it because they look for natural explanations first. They try to verify the credibility of the story. They do some actual legwork and investigate. If they can explain it, they do. If they can't, they don't. But there's been a host of sightings in the general Chicago area and in states connected to Lake Michigan that all revolve around the possibility of a Mothman or similar type creature. And I thought this one was very interesting because it's a situation in which his girlfriend, his fiance, wrote him off as, oh, you're crazy, you didn't see anything. And even so, he's like, but I kind of did, and I don't know what it was. I think it's certainly possible that in a lot of these situations, it's just a simple misidentification, a drone, a bird, anything like that. But there are always the possibilities that it could be something else. I don't know what to make of Mothman. I don't know what to make of these sightings and videos and claims of seeing winged humanoids, but it's certainly interesting. I know it would be terrifying to me, and a lot of people who see these things are terrified. But this guy isn't sure of what he saw. The drawing isn't much to look at. The guy is right. He's not an artist. But certainly people are seeing something. Is there a type of bird or animal that people are unfamiliar with that happens to be in this area that didn't used to be, or that is thought to be extinct? Some people think that these sightings are supernatural. Some people think that it's simply misidentification. Some people think that there's something akin to a pterodactyl that still exists that people are seeing and is freaking them out. I don't know what to make of it. There certainly have been times that I've seen a drone flying and not realized it was a drone till later, or a kite even. At the beach recently, I saw this dude in this like wingsuit thing that had some type of motor that was flying around, and at first from a distance I was like, what in the world is that? Because it wasn't being pulled by a boat, and I was like, I'm on Jurassic World right now. Like it's going down. Like that thing has a beak. And when it got closer, it was just a rich man that had the ability to fly himself around. So I don't know what to make of all of this, but it's definitely something worth noting and talking about on this part of the show. Tobias Wayland is somebody that I do not know, but who I follow on Twitter. I appreciate his work. I have a copy of his book, Strange Tales of the Impossible. You can check that out on Amazon. And maybe I'll reach out to Tobias and see if he'll come on the show. I think he would be a good guest to talk about his investigation, to talk about the stuff that he's seen and heard, what he believes, what he thinks is going on. How do you explain this story? How do you explain these sightings? Is this all a hoax? Is this just simple misidentification, or is there something more at play here? Email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Get at us on Twitter at intheshed4. We would love to hear from you. From the Chicagoland area, we go to Amazon Prime for our next story. That's right, my babies. I promised you a review of a very good show last week, and I'm following through with my promise because Wes Anderson, if nothing else, is a man of his word. Okay? I want to offer a review of a show that I've recently finished the first season of. A second season is scheduled but not out yet, or a release date has not been given. It's Amazon Prime's Outer Range, Season 1. An 8-episode Amazon Prime deep dive into life on a ranch where there is much more going on than meets the eye. Have you seen this show, my babies? Outer Range got a 7.1 out of 10 on IMDb and 81% on Rotten Tomatoes, both very respectable ratings. Outer Range is an American science fiction neo-western series streaming on Amazon Prime. A rancher fighting for his land and family discovers an unfathomable mystery, words are hard, at the edge of Wyoming's wilderness. Outer Range stars Josh Brolin, Imogen Poots, unfortunate name, very talented actress, Noah Reed, Tom Pelphrey, Lily Taylor, Lewis Pullman, one of my favorites, Will Patton, and more. This show, to me, is like as if Yellowstone and Stranger Things had a baby. That's what this show is like. If you're a fan of Yellowstone, if you like Stranger Things, this might be a show that you would enjoy. Outer Range. Western motif, paranormal sci-fi bent. This show has excellent acting, interesting character development. It has a plot that I don't think really can be predicted. It had surprises in there for me. I figured out parts of it, but certainly not the whole. It's sure to hold your attention. It's a show that could appeal to a wide variety of viewers. I watched it by myself without my wife, and I might go back and watch it again, which I don't normally do. I might get her to watch it along with me so that we can tap into season 2 together when it's announced. But I thought it was a tremendous show. I would love to hear your feedback on it and what you made of the story and the plot, what you thought of the acting. I thought it was very well done and very well put together. I'd give season 1 of Outer Range on a scale of 1 star to 5 star, with 5 being this show was perfection and 1 star being this show should have never been made. I give it a 4.7 stars. I really do. I give it a 4.7 stars. I think it was a tremendous first season of a show. And if it continues like that, then I will look forward to watching it, hopefully for a few more seasons. Have you seen Outer Range? It's on Amazon Prime. What did you think of it? If you have, email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Let me know what rating you would give it. Did you agree with me? A 4.7 stars is a very high rating. I'd have to go back and look. It might be the highest rating that we've given out on this show. So yeah, Outer Range with Josh Brolin and Will Patton and Imogen Poots on Amazon Prime. And from Amazon Prime, we go to philosophy for our final story. The philosophy of Thursdayism, also known as Last Thursdayism. Last Thursdayism is the idea that the universe was created last Thursday, but with the physical appearance of being billions of years old. It's also a counter to the theory of young creationism, which states that the Earth was created 6,000 years ago but only appears to be billions of years old. Under Last Thursdayism, books, fossils, light already on the way from distant stars, and literally everything, including your memories of the time before last Thursday, were all formed at the time of creation, last Thursday, in a state that makes them appear much older. Last Thursdayism functions both as a philosophical point on how our observations may not match with reality and a critique of the young earth creationist ideas. The debate on whether last Thursdayism is true has raged on ever since the creation of the universe on last Thursday. Last Thursdayism is an unfalsifiable hypothesis. The idea that the world was made last Thursday is hard to believe, as we perceive time to be like a river. One action follows another, and we can recall the past. Once we get to Thursday of next week, will the same question be posed? That's a troubling thought. It's troubling because it makes the past seem like it never happened. The memories, the people in our lives, and history itself would all be creations. Nothing more than perception and lies. If history were a lie, the Holocaust never happened. Yeah, that definitely happened. USA didn't drop any atomic bombs on Japan, and other key events never happened. The judicial system would fail, as criminals who are incarcerated could all get out of jail by saying that since the crime that is perceived to have been purported never actually happened, they couldn't be charged. So it would be terrifying if it were true. The repercussions would be so bad that maybe, just maybe, ignorance would even be better. So the philosophy of Thursdayism, aka last Thursdayism, is an idea that sprang up in response to young earth creationism. The idea that the earth is only 6,000 years old. And then people say, well, wait a minute, if you're saying God created the earth 6,000 years ago, how come it carbon dates to millions, billions of years old? How come we know that it takes billions of years for these things to happen? And some in the young earth creationism community respond to that by saying, well, the earth was made 6,000 years ago, but it was created in such a way that it appears to be much older. So as a critique of that theory and that philosophy, the philosophy of last Thursdayism was born, in which people kind of used a similar thinking to say, well, hey, maybe the universe was created last Thursday, and everything that you see before you just came into being in a way that makes it seem like it's been around for a lot longer. In one sense, the philosophy of last Thursdayism is next level trolling, okay? But also it's an interesting philosophical idea. And it's a thinking pattern that, while somewhat circular, can't necessarily be dismissed on its head as impossible. And it kind of shines a light on our lack of ability to explain everything around us in a sensible way, because our perception is not reality. And the line between how we view things and what is not a straight line. Religion and science, neither one have all things figured out. And I say that not to put you down if you're a person of science, not to put you down if you're a person of faith. I believe in both. What I mean by that is that we don't have answers for everything that we see. We don't have answers to all of our questions. There's plenty of room for doubt, plenty of room for questioning, plenty of room for discovery. And there's a lot of stuff that we just simply will never know during our short 80 years on this earth. And so Thursdayism takes advantage of that and puts it under a microscope and says, since we can't be certain of some things, what if we're not certain of anything? What if everything came into being last Thursday, and from Thursday to Thursday, the universe exists like we see it, and next Thursday, a new universe is created in a way that it appears as though it had always been there? On the one hand, my mind is blown. On the other hand, I find it completely hilarious. But on this show, we investigate all things together. We talk about all possibilities. We understand that we don't always understand. And that's okay too. And I thought that the philosophy of Thursdayism was something worth mentioning, was something that probably a lot of you guys have never heard of, and is a fun thing to talk about. It would be scary. If that was really the case, it would be scary, because all the memories that we have in the past and the relationships and all the things that we quote unquote know, none of it would be real. Most of it would have never happened. And we would have even less control in charting our own course than we believe we do even now. Certainly an interesting idea. That's all for this week. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. I can't either. It's back in the house and out of the shed for me. Thanks again for listening to episode 43. Make sure to subscribe, like, share, and review. It really does help. If you have any paranormal experiences, opinions about sports, or politics that you'd like to share, you can email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Again, that's intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. I might even read it on air. Look for us on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, the Good Pods app, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to follow us on Twitter at InTheShed4. Tune in again next week when we'll hit the headlines, talk some college football, and investigate together the lost colony of Roanoke. This has been In the Shed with Wes Anderson, the best news show in the land covering politics, sports, and the paranormal. Have an adventurous and fulfilling weekend. I'll catch you tools later. Peace out, Boy Scout. Meemaw, we made it!
Full-time